show.
I would like to call to order the June 7th, 2021 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome, everyone. First item is approval of our work session agenda, which you all have a copy of that before you. So do I hear a motion to approve the agenda with the changes on page 3? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move now to discussion items for tonight. First up is item 3.1 from Active Living and Parks, reopening plan. That's something we're excited to hear about and happy about. And we're happy to have Londa Strong to present that.
Thank you so much. Have a little sinus infection going on here. Byron Haguler may need to step in for me here in just a minute. I can't talk very long. You all know that's killing me. But I will try. I'll do the best that I can. As you know, with the Executive Order 215, things changed kind of quickly, rapidly, more so than we expected. And at the parks have been open and going. The senior center is the one where you all probably had phone calls, emails. I know we all have. And we've been trying to answer them as efficiently and correctly as we could at the time. But now that Executive Order 215, we didn't want to just open the door straight up because we don't have instructors in place. Because they were furloughed, so we've got to rehire. We've got to find them. We've got to rehire them. Got to get them oriented, get going again. Same thing with Lunch and Learn. We haven't started that back yet because we don't have a vendor. K&W was the vendor. Contract obviously became null and void during COVID. So we're trying to find a vendor and make sure that we have enough money. As everyone knows, everything is a little bit more expensive right now than it was pre-COVID. And same thing with the dances on Friday and or Saturday nights. We're trying to, again, book bands, get the contracts, get them set up. So I think we're a little ambitious with our plan, but we've been working very diligently to get the first week of July to have everything open. We do have the billiards room open, and we've limited the number of people that can be in there at a time. There's only 2 tables, so we have 4 people. And that way we don't have people sitting around, which they really like to do, and hopefully we'll be able to do that again soon. The game rooms, the dominoes and cribbage and all of the other card games and things that they play, we've not got that going right now simply because of in dealing with risk management. And that's one thing that we have done through all of this is deal with risk management as to what is recommended or not recommended. You know, obviously sharing equipment pieces is probably not the best thing to do. So, but again, we're looking at that first week of July. I believe that's the 6th. That sound right? Tuesday the 6th is what we're looking at, trying to get that started again. We don't know that we'll have everything the same. When instead of having a dance every Friday night and every other Saturday night, this may be a perfect time to limit some of that because there are other places doing dances now that weren't, and we don't want to be competing with each other, the YMCAs or any of the local clubs that are doing them. So we may look at that. And then when you come to Mount Pleasant Senior Center, the Lunch Plus site is drive-through. And we've been working with Cindy Hall, and I've talked with Anthony about if that is going to continue. And currently they plan on it continuing as a drive-through. We don't feel that it's safe to have people walking through the parking lot the way Mount Pleasant is set up, to walk through the parking lot while they're driving through to get their food. As you all may remember, a year or so ago, we had someone drive through the wall out there. So, you know, things happen. And we're trying to make it as safe as possible. And one of the things that we talked about is, and this was in part of the plan, is to change the hours to 12 to 9 instead of 8 to 5. And that may be able to pick up some of the people that still work. Because right now, people that work aren't able to come because it's basically pre-COVID was 8 to 5. So that's another thing that we're looking at. No decision has been made, and we don't want to until we get everything worked out with the Lunch Plus site. for Mount Pleasant. So in a nutshell, that's it. Everything's been going at the park. Summer camp is, again, at the arena, since we don't have the barn at Frank Lisk that was the home base. And the numbers are up a little bit. Jonathan was telling me this morning that they're about 60 to 65 a week, where last year was about 40 a week on a good week. And pre-COVID was like 125 a week. So we're moving back up, but they're staying in cohorts, and we're working with the following the guidelines from North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services on their interim guidance for summer camps and programs, and that's dealing with masks and the instructors and the counselors and trips and everything. And again, we dealing with John Bradley too as well for risk. So kind of a nutshell of where we are. Be glad to answer any questions that you have or concerns or thoughts from some of the people I know that you've had phone calls or emails from.
Questions for Londa? I'll just say that everything you just said makes perfect sense, and that's exactly the same thing certainly I in private business are experiencing and hearing other people as well. We would love to turn the faucet back on wide open and go, but it just doesn't work that way.
No.
And that employment issue and vendor issue, those are all real things, and so it sounds like you've done a very comprehensive job of detailing all those items.
We have tried, and the counselors for summer staff, summer camp, a lot of them are teachers. The majority of ours have been teachers, so with school, having summer school, and a lot of the kids in summer school, we've lost a lot of counselors as well as students there. So Jonathan Poole has done a good job in recruiting, and HR department's done a great job getting our information out, and we're status quo right now. Don't know how long that'll last, but currently we are.
Well, I'm sure that after the thousands of young people watching this program tonight, you'll probably be overrun tomorrow.
That's right. That's right. We'll be ready for them.
Any other questions for Londa? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, next up is our Innovation and Technology Report, and we are happy to have Debbie Brannon with us for that.
Live and in person tonight.
In person, that's a treat. For us, maybe not for you.
Well, welcome to the June Innovation Report. I'm happy to be here in person tonight. First of all, our Employee Digital Book Club book is the Crucibles Gift. It's 5 lessons from authentic leaders who thrive in adversity. And we've all experienced a lot of adversity over the last year and a half, so a test or a trial or your individual crucible, it gives you the potential to increase self-awareness, develop a deeper compassion with more integrity, and boost connection with your colleagues. So high-impact leaders thrive in adversity because of their crucibles, not in spite of them. So if you'd like to learn how to move your leadership style from "it happened to me" to "it happened for me," join me in listening to this month's book, The Crucibles Gift. Again, tonight, our innovation report is going to touch on some transparency and accountable government and sustainable and growth and development. Last year, I guess it was in September, in the innovation report, I introduced you to MyCabco, which was a new online payment processor for our tax system. Just to remind you, it reduced the fees for the taxpayers. It provided a shopping cart feature, and it provided a secure online payment that automatically updated our tax system instead of using a batch processing. It also provided a way to do scheduled payments and partial payments, and stores receipts in your digital wallet. And if you've ever used My NCDMV to renew your driver's license or your tag, you can also use that account as well to log into MyCabco. That is also powered by Payit. So after 9 months, we have had more than 3,500 accounts created on MyCabco, over 10,000 transactions, and we've collected over $22 million online. So a lot of that came at a very timely time when we needed contactless payment during the pandemic. But you can see even after our offices opened, our new payment processor has been outpacing our previous online processor. So I think that has a lot to do with the experience the citizens have with a little chat bot that walks you through the system. And so it's a superior to our previous online processor. Last year, I also said that we plan to provide the ability to receive digital tax bills. This will be a convenience for our constituents who are used to other bills coming digitally. They can choose to have their tax bill come in, but eventually, if we have a lot of people choose this option, it will also save money from printing and postage for the county. So as promised, this year we're introducing e-billing with our 2021 tax bills. Beginning on the 21st of this month, taxpayers will be able to log into MyCabco and they can select to receive their tax bill through their email this year instead of on paper. And they will receive something in their email similar to this. It will look a little different from the regular tax bills, but it'll also give a way to click on a link and go directly to MyCabco to make a payment. So it's another convenient way to make payments. And we're also working to expand the use of MyCabco and advertise our new e-billing option by taking advantage of the vertical partnership we have with Pay It and the state. So anybody that's registered with my NCDMV that lives in Cabarrus County, we're going to be able to send them an advertisement and let them know that this is available online through MyCabco as well. So ultimately, my vision is to use this partnership with Pay It and the state and to create some seamless user experiences between state and local government. Because as you know, a lot of people usually will come to the county and it's really a state function. And if we can make that transition and make it easier for the citizen, no matter where they go, whether they go to the state, looking, or to the county, we can make sure they get to the right place. And this is just an example of how that's already working. This is a customer that had used my NCDMV and they were pleased with how easy it was. And then they asked, what about property taxes? And so that Pay It support person was able to say, well, if you live in Cabarrus County, which they did, that they could go online and pay their property taxes. So that integration is already working for us. And just a reminder, I think I announced this last year when it happened, but we did receive a Government Experience Award last year for this project. And that's, if anybody has any questions about tax bills, David's here, he can answer that. But and that wraps up the innovation report.
Debbie, I think that's a great move toward getting things more efficient and less expense and all of that involved. With all of the things that's going on in the world today negatively for technology, I'm a little bit leery about too awful much, with big corporations getting ransomware and hacked and all kind of crazy stuff going on. So I think people might be might be a little bit more reluctant to put their things online now. So I don't know, but just the food for thought.
Yeah, I do think that there is an expectation that government, act like industry. And so, I get my credit card bill online. I don't get it in the, I'm paperless on my bank statements and things like that. So I think there is some expectation that we respond the same way, but I also encourage everyone to be very cyber aware and secure, and make sure if you're going somewhere, make sure you're going to you have checked it out, and don't click on links and emails that you aren't expecting. So go to a known source, known good source.
Exactly, and one of the good things about, your department is doing the cyber tests that we go through periodically, and where that your staff sends out all this stuff, and some people get called, I'm sure. I think I probably got called 2 or 3 times, but I've learned, though, to check the email, see where it came from, and don't click on links until you know. And that goes for the same thing for financing and banking and all of that. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate you move forward.
Thank you. Yes, I've almost gotten caught by that too. There was an invoice the other day that came in, and I was like, oh, I'm not sure. I really don't think so. I'm gonna fish this just to make sure, and
Well,
if
I
you're ever
forward
in
them,
doubt, just
but
fish it.
I just forward them to you now.
Yes.
When there's doubt, I just
That's
send
a
it to
good,
Debbie, move
that's a
on.
good process too. We will check them out and make sure
I'm
they're
glad to know I'm
legitimate.
not the only one that does that.
Well, there for a while, I was getting emails from somebody that said they were Steve. And so I let Steve know about it, and I think he contacted you, so I don't know whether they got that. I guess you did. I hadn't got any more in a while anyway.
Yeah. The cyber criminals are very tricky, so we have to be very aware.
Well, I will say that I did use the service to pay my taxes, and I have used the Pay It with NCDMV prior to that, and it was extremely easy. It was really a big advantage, convenience to do that. So, thank
Thank
you
you.
and all your folks for all the work in that direction.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, next up, item 3.3, Cabarrus County Ordinance clarification for section 46.2 regarding the discharge of firearms, and I think Commissioner Strang will talk about that.
Yes, thank you. It was brought to my attention by some residents, some citizens of some areas in Harrisburg, Mount Pleasant, and off of Unts Road, that there were some firearms, people shooting in the backyards, which they're fine with, but they're getting a little too close for comfort. So when we pulled the county ordinance, we saw that it was a little bit muddy, I guess you could say, under subsection B. And so I spoke with Van, and I've talked to Ashley Shanley, and I've talked to David Goldberg, our attorney, and we came up with a little bit of a revision just for clarification, because what we had learned was that law enforcement as well as citizens were having a hard time deciphering what subsection B was, and wanted to clarify in subsection B, it's like the distance. So the deputies were having a very difficult time trying to determine, are they in violation, or are they out of violation of the distance? So what we did is we excluded it and made it very specific to the actual physical structure. We're not limiting anybody's gun rights by any stretch of the imagination. It's more of a safety mechanism at this point, because we are growing rapidly, and there are areas of the county that are building up around areas that have, very good open areas where people are used to shooting, but we have to be mindful of that as we grow and get larger. So that's what we've come up with. We can have some discussion on it, but it will need a public hearing also at some point.
I can talk through it if you give the specifics if you'd like. Yeah, I think we probably need to give some detail. of
That's fine.
the change, so
That's
the
fine.
rest of the board knows. Yep.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. To talk you through it, the draft you're looking at, in subsection A, currently the ordinance refers to 500 yards of any business or residential district in the county situated outside the corporate limits of any and all municipalities in the county. So that's what we're referring to as the districts, and trying to define what a district is was to measure from 500 yards. So subsection B below, which is being stricken, provide a definition where 75% or more of the frontage therein for a distance of 300 feet or more is mainly occupied by dwellings or by dwellings and buildings in the use for business purposes. So when you see 75% or more of a frontage, trying to find what the frontage is, distance of 300 feet became difficult. Mainly occupied is a fairly ambiguous term as well in the law, and all of it became difficult to administer. So in lieu of that, we're striking in subsection A, the reference to business districts, and then instead referring to either an occupied building of any characterization, or 2, a residence, business, house of worship, educational facility, park facility, or any other public gathering facility, regardless of whether these places are occupied. So anywhere occupied, and then those specific categories. Replaced in subsection B is a further instruction regarding the measurement of distance. As Commissioner Strang was pointing out, being very particular, saying from the point of discharge to the actual physical structure, where a district was a fairly ambiguous term. Here we have a very definite location of where these measurements are to take place. Subsection C is unchanged regarding rights to self-defense under this. And subsection D is unchanged regarding the normal penalties for any breach of ordinance. Subsection E is a clarification of what was informally in subsection A, that this applies outside of municipalities but within the county. It does not apply within the county. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does not apply within the city.
It is not, forgive me, it does not apply within the cities. It applies within the unincorporated areas of the county.
I was totally unaware, of this particular ordinance that we have here. I do know, though, of instances where that residents had contacted me about the problem that Commissioner Strang's talking about. But the changes that you're recommending, I concur with that, because our ground is getting taken up more and more and more, so the houses are getting more and closer together and all of that. But I just noticed something here that's in the original language, and it's not being recommended to change, that I particularly don't agree with myself, and I'm just one of the rest of you guys. But a BB gun, a BB gun, they usually don't have a range no more than 100, 150 yards at the max. Why would BB gun be listed in here?
So
And that's the original ordinance.
Yes, sir. To give you a little bit of background, I cannot speak to the, I believe this ordinance was last amended in, I believe 1967 it was, or 63. So it's difficult to speak to their intentions. I can tell you from a legal standpoint that there is a specific separate section of authority allowing a county to regulate the discharge of BB guns, air compressor rifles, and other arms. I can tell you from other counties that we examined, some choose to treat them consistently, and others do not regulate them. Others regulate them separately. So that is within your discretion.
And I understand the air compression, because some of those air compression rifles these days, they shoot a pellet the size of a bullet, and they have a much longer range. But the BB gun, a typical BB gun, you don't get that much range out of that at the, effective range. It's gonna drop as it goes, but personally, I don't see that even needs to be in there. It needs to come off, in my opinion, but that's just me, whatever the rest of the board thinks. I think that's a little bit, the right word would be ridiculous, to be honest with you. I don't know what their intentions were.
Right.
But based on what I know, growing up in the county, growing up just like all of us did, we probably all had a BB gun at one time, and you'd see things you want to shoot, but they'd be too far off. And so to think about 500 yards, my God, that's a quarter of a mile. So anyway, that's just my thoughts, guys. I'm just trying to be real here.
Well, I think that's a valid question. How do the municipalities deal with BB guns in their ordinances?
Within the county here,
Yes.
I'm unfamiliar off the top of my head.
Uh-huh.
They do have the power and authority, but they were not one of the other jurisdictions that we examined. We're mostly
Right.
focused on county regulation, the unincorporated areas as appear. But I can look into that, Commissioner.
Yeah, I think in most of our municipalities, it's illegal to just charge a firearm at all.
Yes, sir, that's much within the corporate jurisdiction, it's very common to do just entire bans or very strong limitations. So I can do
Right.
some research and have that information to you very quickly.
I think that would be good to
Yeah.
know, because I think that question may be raised. People that live out in the county are probably gonna be more likely to engage in target practice or that sort of thing where they're not in populated areas?
Well,
been
probably most people's like me, I didn't know that BB gun was included. I pretty much knew that, the rifles and shotguns and all that sort of had some type of regulation. But I remember, the deputies telling me, well, Lynn, we really can't do anything about it because, you know, it's within the range and all, but anyway.
We've been dealing with this for about 10 years, on and off. About every 2 years it would come up, they'd have a situation out in the county where the deputies would answer a call, and they were trying to figure out how to do the measurement. It was that issue about residential district and how to measure it that were the problems they were having from time to time. No one, or I should say, I guess, that when it did come up, it was always about someone shooting a regular gun. We've never had someone, one of the situations that they had to deal with.
Past, we've consulted with Susie Morris in the zoning and planning, and it's a very labor-intensive calculation to figure out, okay, where do we think this happened, and then you get the maps on there, and it's a difficult it's a fairly difficult calculation, and is ambiguous. It would be it could be disputed in any, you know, in any circumstances. A judge would have to make a decision if it was contested. So this would definitely make it much more predictable and clear.
Okay, any other questions for David? And of course, I guess before we set a public hearing to get input, we need to come to some consensus on how we want this worded. If there's concern about the BB guns, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and bring this back next month and discuss those issues and then talk about it at our work session next month and then call for a public hearing if we have that. Is that everybody in agreement with that? Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, we move now to discussion items for action, and first up from Active Living and Parks, Eagle Scout Project.
Sheriff just walked in, if he's here for that.
Yep, well, before we move to that, since Sheriff Shaw just arrived, we're giving you a big welcome. We were discussing this gun ordinance, and the question came up regarding BB guns. And we've kind of decided we wanted to know a little bit more about that before we set a public hearing. And so Commissioner Shue had some specific questions, if you want to address those to the sheriff.
Hello, Sheriff. Good to see you come slipping in on us
Yes,
like
sir.
that.
Apologize for the delay.
Yeah, well, you know, like our attorney Cook has said, over the last 10 years, we've had not a lot, but we have complaints of people out in the county shooting guns and things like that. And the location from where they're shooting to the nearest structure was a problem in determining, you know, whether they're breaking the law or not.
Right.
But despite all, I'm okay with the change that we're gonna make. We're gonna do it where that it's the actual distance from where they're shooting physical instead of road frontage, which will clarify it for you guys. But the question that I was unaware of this, is that in the original ordinance where it's talking about, you know, different firearms, it's got BB guns listed in there.
Yes.
And can you maybe tell us why? You know, I don't know. Obviously, you wasn't sheriff then.
Yes,
You was
sir.
a young feller, just like the rest of us were. And it was 67 when that was last put into the ordinances.
I cannot give you an explanation. I mean, it's part of the reason we looked at it was the age, and be quite honest, the difficulty for the deputy that responds to the call of being able to determine if there's a violation or not. In some cases it's very clear cut because they're close to a residence.
Sure.
But when you start adding distances and the formula by which you have to figure road frontage and those types of things, it was very, very hard for it to be resolved without us consulting with our zoning department to see if it met the criteria. So, that's the real emphasis, is to make it a little clearer cut. The other thing that was happening was, sometimes in those determinations, other properties would be involved that normally wouldn't be involved if you were just doing a straight line measurement to see if there was a violation, if that makes sense, because it would come up with this circle of a district that now has encroached, so to speak, over onto this other property that in a lot of cases could be even twice the distance from it. So that was the real purpose behind looking at this, to make it easier to enforce and easier for the citizens to understand. You know, it's a straight line distance. Now, why it originally included BB guns and air rifles, I do not know. I don't know if that was an attempt to, you know, cut down on any damage that might be done by an air rifle, those types of things. I will be honest with you, I think having that in there, it takes away the opportunity for someone to practice marksmanship, you know, without the use of a full-blown firearm.
Right.
As many of us grew up doing.
Right.
I had my Red Ryder BB gun
Right.
too, and, you know, I did that very same thing. So I'm certainly not opposed to it being removed if the board so feels that it's okay to do that. I can't tell you or give you any cases where we've had vandalism recently involving air rifles. Again, I think maybe the prudent thing would do is to, you know, not necessarily disallow it, but maybe make it, I guess the question is because it's treated just like a regular firearm. So, you know, which of course the trajectory, those types of things of those types of guns just don't even come close to the trajectory of a .22 rifle or a larger caliber gun. So I certainly wouldn't have a problem with that, and don't know of any issue that has really addressed in the past.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that, you know, information to us. And, you know, the normal, everyday, average citizen out there, if you call a public hearing and you include BB guns in that and they were unaware of it, I would imagine that we would probably have a room full of people saying what I had just already said. And I don't think that, if there's no objections, I think that it needs to be removed, because quite honestly, from 1967, as we discussed earlier, I don't know what their intentions were, the commissioners at that time. But, obviously, you know, you and I, we know about BB guns. They don't have a trajectory. Some of those air compression rifles do though. But,
Right.
you're specifically saying BB gun, and it's the difference between a pellet gun and a BB gun.
Sure.
Big difference. So that's just my 2 cents worth, but I appreciate you enlightening us and being with us.
Absolutely. The other thing I would say too, I think the way this ordinance was written, since it was 1967, it applied to so few people in the county because of the population in 1967 versus 2021. That's where we are beginning to see more and more questions about these particular types of calls and how because we end up leaving, not resolving it until days later, which can lead to continued disputes, problems, you know, but there's no resolution unless it's really a blatant violation. So that's really the purpose behind it, and probably why most people don't understand the current ordinance and wouldn't understand or know that a BB gun is included in that ordinance, because for so many years, I don't think anybody would have fallen into that particular category.
Well, truthfully, deputies probably wouldn't arrest somebody, a kid, out
No,
with his
sir.
BB gun
I
anyway.
would hope not unless they're causing some vandalism or something like that. Then we try and work with the parents and let them take the appropriate action. That's probably the better way to go.
I agree with you.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, that satisfies, you know, my curiosity. If the ordinance in itself, the changes we're making, help make a better definition of what they're dealing with, and he's okay with it excluding a BB gun, and we know a BB gun's not shooting 500 yards, I'm fine if we pull that out, not waiting another month before we then have a public hearing to then delay it even, I mean, I guess on the one hand, we've had it since 1967, what's another month? Really nothing. But if we know that we're heading in the right direction per our law enforcement, then I'm fine with going ahead with it. But that's just, I'm just one of five, but that's my opinion.
Commissioners, since this item is still open, I did want to bring you attention to answer your question about the municipalities. Reviewing the Concord ordinances, it is unlawful for any person to shoot or discharge by bow and arrows, crossbow, gun, pistol, or other firearm, BB gun, air compression gun, spring gun, or other similar device which propels with force or shot a pellet or other projectile within the municipal corporate limits of the city. So they do, use a similar language for the city of Kannapolis as well. So they do handle BB guns and other air projectiles.
Right.
The approach they do, with no limit, the approach they take, though, is they provide a list of, I believe it's 10 different exceptions to that otherwise broad limitation that are based on the specific use of those projectiles and weapons. So that's an example of how other counties and jurisdictions approach this. Is they have a very broad ban, but then they provide specific use-specific exceptions to that. So, for instance, for hunting, for target practice, certain target practice, using model rockets designed to propel a model vehicle in a vertical direction, and so on. So that is an approach that the cities take and other jurisdictions do take.
So if I want to go sit on my deck and shoot squirrels with a BB gun, it's illegal.
You would want to do that outside of 500 yards from right now a residential district.
Right. And that's whether you're in the city or not.
Yes, sir. So if you're in the county and under our ordinance, you would have problems with the sheriff here. And if you were in the Concord of Kannapolis, I do not see a squirrel shooting an exception.
That is
I'm
not
happy
an
to do more
admission of
research.
guilt.
But David, I can understand the municipalities such as Concord, in subdivisions, I understand that. But, the way that I look at this is there's people out in the county that's got hundreds of acres, 10 acres, 5 acres, they can, they got plenty of places for their kids to roam. But it's not like you got a house right next door to you, that's obviously illegal. And I can understand it for the BB gun in residential areas like that. But out in the county, the city ordinance covers it regardless. But for the county though, you rule on everybody, like Steve with him, he'd have some happy squirrels is all I know.
Not a very good aim, anyway. So, what's your pleasure, commissioners, to go with this as written, or do you have concerns that you think that we need to ask Mr. Goldberg to edit?
So one thing to clarify also is this would actually.
You need to be at a microphone.
Oh, sorry. This would actually not require a public hearing. You're right. So you could do this at a full meeting without having to take a public hearing. Mr. Cook, if I'm.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I think the reason that you might consider it, though, is because it is somewhat controversial,
Right.
so.
But we could make, if you wanted to, we could make the change that's being discussed as far as the BB guns, and have that ready for the full have that waiting for the full meeting. You don't necessarily have to approve that language today, if I'm correct.
Right. Okay, and that's what I heard initially that you wanted to do, was to make that edit. And I see,
I think,
And you have no problems with that?
I do not.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm fine with that. And I do agree with having the public hearing, just so people have a chance to.
so that they're informed.
To be clear on my instructions on that, just take out BB gun, or just take out the BB gun and the air rifles and other references. So do we want to make it just apply to firearms, or anything other than firearms as well?
I would just say BB gun because air rifles and those types of things do have, and compression weapons depending on what modifications they have, they can go a pretty good distance.
Yeah, so just the BB gun
Understood.
and leave the other, the others in. Very good. Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
So,
Oh, yeah.
so we take the BB guns out, bring it back in 2 weeks? Or
For
are we
public
bringing it back
hearing?
in the next month?
2 weeks is my impression.
Okay.
And that we're not required to have a public hearing, but as long, so I guess that's a little bit more complicated. If we do have a public hearing, then we have to advertise it and follow all those rules, right? Now,
You could call for that tonight.
Yeah.
right. Aside from having a formal public hearing, just like every item that we discuss on our work session agenda, the public has an opportunity to be notified and to come and provide input and comment prior to us voting on any of those items. So if you think that's sufficient, then we don't have to go through the other process, but we can. So just whatever you feel comfortable with. Do you want a formal public hearing that we advertise in the newspaper or whatever methods we use?
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, if we're not required to have the public hearing, then we shouldn't have a public hearing if we're not required to, because all we're gonna do is just bring in, you know, a chance for controversy one way or the other. And I don't think that, truthfully, I don't think that's necessary, because after all, you haven't had any complaints with BB guns anyway, that I know of, you know, based on what you said. And so, I mean, it's just, if you get in a situation where someone calls and is complaining, well, and if it's a BB gun, it's not in the ordinance. It's that simple. And so I don't think we need to make it worse, you know, by doing a public hearing. That run the risk of making it more than what it is. We're just talking about taking the BB gun
Right,
out.
with,
you know.
with the understanding that people still have an opportunity
Oh,
to
sure.
come and provide input. Does everybody feel comfortable with that? I'm seeing,
Yeah, I'm sort of contemplating that. I mean, all we're really doing is changing the definition of how we're gonna measure, right? I mean, ultimately, that's all we're doing.
right,
I mean, to me, that probably doesn't necessitate doing the normal formal advertising and trying to do that. It's just, anytime you change something that people are that passionate about, maybe you kind of want to defer to the side of caution and put it out there that we're doing it, just so people don't think we're trying to do something.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, it
behind
goes back to the
back door.
transparency
Yeah,
issue.
right.
Now, like you said, it's on the agenda. If people are watching, they can still come and do the comments. So I'm okay without the public hearing, because I wasn't thinking about the comment piece of it. But, you know, I think from a transparency point of view, any place that we have to just put the agenda or whatever that, you know, that's there, I think is a good thing.
yeah, I guess we could extend that discussion to the other ordinance changes that we've enacted over the past several months regarding zoning and building codes, things of that nature. I mean, theoretically, we could call for a public hearing. Some of those do require public hearings. So whatever the group feels comfortable
I
with.
guess all I was saying was I was a little bit torn. I mean, I'm fine if we don't. You were looking for nods of the head and I wasn't giving you one, and I thought I'd better explain why I
Well,
wasn't.
you do have informal public comment at every one of your regular meetings, and then if you get enough public comment during that time, you could always pull off the agenda for more discussion or open it up. And
Right,
so there would still be plenty of time for people to make comments.
yeah.
I guess my only concern is the deputies have been in contact with several individuals throughout the county, and those individuals actually know what the current ordinance is. If we go changing it up on it, does that make it difficult for you, or does that, without any kind of public hearing or notification for transparency's sake?
To be perfectly honest, I don't think it will cause a problem. Quite frankly, we get into a problem when we try to explain the current ordinance.
Okay.
Where this is so much clearer cut, It doesn't change the distances, it just changes the process of measuring where that, distance is. So it's much clearer. This ordinance has been an issue for a number of years on enforcement. It just is very problematic. So I think we'll be able to transition with this new ordinance, if you decide to pass it, that very easily, very, very easily.
That's why I just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
you were okay with that if we didn't do a public hearing, because you have engaged with some of these folks.
Right, absolutely. And each one of those that recently that I've had a discussion with, I've talked with them and told them that we were looking at the ordinance, that we were working on it jointly in an effort to clear it up.
Okay, so the consensus that I'm getting is that we go ahead, put this on the agenda for our regular meeting in 2 weeks with the edits that we've discussed regarding the BB gun without a formal public hearing, and receive public comment according to our regular procedure. And I see positive head nods from everyone, so. Very good, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. I apologize for the delay.
You were extremely timely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Okay, now we move to Eagle Scout Project from Active Living in Parks. Joshua Kaufman is going to lead that discussion with some help.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Jonathan do most of the talking. But Jonathan is with the Boy Scouts, and he approached me last year about wanting to do a Eagle Scout project at Vietnam Veterans Park. With COVID, it was a little bit difficult to get together. We were trading emails back and forth. In March, we finally were able to meet and discuss outside of Vietnam Veterans Park. And I'm gonna let him go into the details. We took it to our board last month, and we had unanimous support for him to proceed. That's why we wanted to bring it before you all. And with that, I'm gonna let Jonathan take it over and explain his Eagle Scout project.
Thank you. So, as Joshua said, my name's Jonathan Lenningham. I'm a Life Scout with Troop 48. We meet out at Kingsway Baptist Church in Concord, and I'm coming to you today to speak about my Eagle Scout project plan that I have in order to go forward and build a heritage trail at the Vietnam Veterans Park in Kannapolis, in Cabarrus County. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Vietnam Veterans Park. So I guess I'll start and kind of go over an overview of what my project was and the plan that I've come up with at the moment to go forward and present to on my side, which would be the Boy Scouts of America, my Cannon district. I will need to go and present my project to a board of review on their side and get approval there as well. And so I wanted to come forward to you to present my proposal and get any feedback necessary. So for my project, I'm planning on building, as I said, a heritage trail at Vietnam Veterans Park. And what that means is I'll be constructing a trail that will follow the perimeter trail at Vietnam Veterans Park and will include plaques that will tell both the story and the history of the Vietnam War, as well as provide a local perspective by including stories of veterans from Cabarrus County that served in the Vietnam War. And one of the biggest problems that I found going forward when choosing and finding what I wanted to do my Eagle Scout project on was finding something that I was really passionate about, that I could go forth and make a difference in my community and impact everyone, both people my age and anyone in our community, for a long period of time to come. And I think this is the best way to do it. In addition to the trail and actual trail that will run through the Vietnam Veterans Park, I will be also administering a website and online database that will tell the stories of Vietnam veterans from Cabarrus County. So that way, whether you're physically in the park or online in the county, or whether you live 2,000 miles away across the country, you would be able to access our database and learn about the veterans and hear their stories from Cabarrus County. And I really fell in love with the idea for this project because, first, on a personal connection, my grandfather did serve in the Navy during the Vietnam War, and so I've always had that attached to me as something that I've heard about in my life and gotten to learn and understand. And I really think that it's important to educate people my age, because especially talking, whether it be out at school or outside of the classroom, just to many people my age, I found that we're losing the connection with and understanding amongst people my age about the sacrifice and the honor that these men that went and served for our country, for our freedom, have laid down their lives and gave up everything that they had in order to ensure our own personal freedoms. And I think that's something really important. I want to honor and properly remember these veterans from Cabarrus County and provide a lasting impact in our community. And I think this project is the best way to do it, because whether someone's purposefully searching out information or logging on online and coming across my project, they'll be able to understand and provide a unique local connection with veterans, because albeit we do learn in school the Vietnam War, but I find that a lot of times we don't have that personal connection with people my age, and I really want to further incorporate that so it'll provide a connection with local people in our area and foster a sense of community. And so going forward, just as I've said, I plan to move forward on this project in the summer and begin construction. I've already reached out to and have a couple contacts with both veterans in Cabarrus County, as well as the American Legion out in Mount Pleasant. I've connected with Peter Sabo, and we've begun contacting and reaching out to veterans. And so I guess to sort of wrap, that's kind of the abridged version of my project and what I plan to move forward with doing throughout the summer and completing my project preferably by November, so I can have it dedicated by Veterans Day would be my goal. But I do want to extend it for as much as I can throughout this year to get as many personal connections that I can with veterans or their families or anyone who would like to provide information for the project. I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
And I'll add real quick that that the trail will start there at the current memorial at Vietnam Veterans Park and go around. It'll tap into the dog run, which we installed. And the one thing we talked about was having a dedication to the war dogs that served in Vietnam War. And there's also, I think, going to be QR codes.
Right, yes. That was something that I did want to mention, to connect both the online database as well as the physical trail in the park. I will be including QR codes on each of the signs, so whether someone, again, as I said, you could access it both in the park or in the comfort of your own home by logging on online. But if you were at the park and just happened to see the project and wanted to learn more, people would just be able to pull out their cell phones and scan the QR codes on the signs to go to the website, where there would be a lot more detail on the project itself. And one thing that I do talk about in my proposal and have reached out to some of my contacts about is interviews with veterans themselves, and allowing them to both be respectful to them, allowing them to provide as much detail as they would like to or feel comfortable with, because that's also something that we need to consider, is respecting those veterans and the right to their privacy. But should they choose, so they can include as much information as they want. And maybe I have talked about the possibility of having audio interviews with them should they choose to move forward with that.
Great. Questions, commissioners? Sounds like a wonderful project, and looking at your budget in your proposal, that's a lot of bang for the buck.
Right.
If you
yeah.
can if you can actually do it for that amount
Oh,
of
yeah.
money. And just curious, I'm sure that there's ongoing expense to maintaining the website and so forth. What are your plans along those lines?
Right, so that is something I wanted to reach out about. I have been in contact with whether it be some of my contacts that I have with the armed forces, but I wanted to reach out and sort of ask people what they were thinking, and ask some of you about maintaining the website for the future. We did talk about linking it on the Active Living in Parks website so anyone would be able to access it. But I was going to go forward to some of my contacts and ask them whether they would prefer to have the website linked there as well to be maintained in the future. One of the options that I did look at, though, for supporting continued information, to have information continually added as time goes on, after I move on from dedicating and building the trail, was I was planning on having an active form that people could go on online and fill out to collect information, where they would be able to fill out as much as they want. And from the form generating websites that I have found, many of them are free. For example, Google Forms is one of them that I was looking at primarily, and that is a free tool to use that we'd be able to just keep up, that people would be able to log into and record their information.
Joshua, I think our IT department has said they can do that.
All right.
Perfect.
Excellent. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to commend you for this project. I think it's great. As a former assistant scoutmaster, I know what that's all about. I know what
Yep.
you're going through, and I know it's always a struggle to find an Eagle project that means a lot to you and means a lot to the community, and I think this is a very, very good showing of that, and I appreciate you bringing this to us.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? We do have a request to suspend the rules and to vote on accepting this project tonight. He's anxious to get started. It's already been delayed for quite a while.
That's true.
So, if it's the pleasure of the board, I would entertain a motion that we suspend the rules to take action on this item tonight. Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. And do I hear a motion that we approve this project, Eagle Scout project, so that he can begin work on it right away?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, questions, or comments?
I do have just one question, Mr. Chairman, and this would be the ongoing maintenance of the trail itself. Have we run this by our infrastructure and asset management team? Has Kyle, I mean, his team obviously will have to be taking care of it. Is that right, or is that some other
Yeah,
area?
well, that's typically what happens. as
Yeah,
part of the
I
staff
reached out to Michael Miller and Kyle.
Yeah.
And the sign shop is actually going to be able to print the signs, and then the parks would maintain upkeep, and then if repairs are needed, it'd be coming through infrastructure. But the basic format's like the current signs we have in the park, so 4x4s, that sort of thing, that's low cost when wood's not.
Sure. Well, I
outrageous
sort of
price.
figured that, hey, you know, I sort of figured that, but you know what they say, the only dumb question is the one you don't
Yeah.
ask, and so I just wanted clarity. Good job on that. I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes, and thank you very much. We are looking forward to visiting the park and seeing your completed project.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we move now to item 4.3, and we're delighted to have Carol Souls back with us to talk about ADA voting equipment.
Thank you. I hope this will be the last time. And I'm before you today just to ask for final approval of purchasing this ADA equipment. We have gone through all the requirements of the state. We had a simulated election, I believe, on May 12th. My board has preliminarily and finally approved this equipment. We will be turning in our old equipment and receive a rebate for that.
Okay, any questions for Carol? Okay, she is also requesting a motion to move forward on this tonight, so I would entertain a motion to once again suspend the rules. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes.
Now you need to approve it.
And that's what I'm looking for, the exact Let's see, I skipped
You skipped
over
one.
one item. We'll go back to that. We're so excited to talk to Carol again. I did, yes. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the recommendation on ADA voting equipment as presented. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you. Okay, and now we will backtrack and go back to active living in parks and talk about school park agreements for Pitt School Road Elementary and Weinkauf Elementary. And we are happy to have Byron Hagler to talk about that.
Thank you, Commissioners, and I also have Sheila Lowry, the Assistant Director for Concord Parks and Recreation, to help with any questions or concerns that you may have. So what I'm coming to you tonight with is requesting an approval of the lease of Pitt School Road and Weinkauf Elementary School Road Park to Concord Parks and Recreation to transfer the operation, the management of those facilities over to Concord Parks and Recreation. Very similar to the Cox Mill transfer, if that jogs your memory for that particular project. And with that, I will entertain any questions for that transfer.
Okay, questions, commissioners?
I guess just for Commissioner Strang, you may not have been involved when we were doing a lot of this from the very beginning. The county has made the decision to sort of move out of the athletics and pass it on to the city associations. And this is part of that process of allowing them to use our fields, but run their leagues as they see fit, so.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
This will go on
Thank
our
you.
agenda in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is item 4.4, and this is appointments to boards and committees. We have a pretty lengthy list this month that all of you have received previously and is included in your agenda. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or comments about the appointments to boards and committees? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item 4.5. This is NACO voting credentials for the 2021 annual conference. And as of last notice, we will not have anybody attending that conference in person, but do we have the opportunity to participate virtually as well? So if we name, if anybody thinks they might participate virtually to represent us as the voting delegate, we will make that appointment. If no one else plans to, I'm happy to do that in the voting areas of that conference. Is that, everybody shaking their head yes? So that will go on our agenda for 2 weeks, that I will be named the voting delegate for the NACO convention. Should that change, should anybody desire to participate, I think that we have options to change that as we go along as well. Okay, we move now to item 4.6, Duke Energy easement at Robinson High School, and Jonathan Marshall will talk to us about that one.
This, again, is an item that you're probably fairly familiar with, that anytime you have any kind of easement, even a very small easement, as is the case here, it does require that you approve it. So there's in fact, Lauren, I have it on page 48, I believe, is the map. Well, and there was a bubble diagram above that, I apologize, that shows this. It is simply, there's a development going in across the road, and Duke Energy is supplying the power to it. The pole where they'll be taking that power from is on the J.M. Robinson site, and they need additional supports and need some equipment with that, so they're asking for this easement on the Robinson site. I believe it said in the original easement I had Board of Education, I have corrected that with Chris Branch with Duke Energy, and he's making that correction to note that the county is the owner of that school site.
Okay, any questions for Jonathan? Okay, I think you have the next item on our agenda, also easements for building adjacent to the county parking garage.
This is the development on what we've called the wrap area next to our parking garage in Novi Flats. They require, just like we do, a backup generator in case of electrical failure. The place that made the most sense to put that is really right next to where our generator is. So Kyle Billifer worked with them on both a location and routing for this. So it requires both a easement for the pad for that generator as well as the path for the power supply. You'll see in the diagram that it actually shows a 30-foot temporary construction easement where our sidewalk is. They had originally asked for an easement all the way across that, but we would prefer that they construct the line and then have a 10-foot easement that goes with it. And then the second part of this, and that's the map that's up here, is they also have where their water supply is coming from, their meter requires an easement from us, so that's before you also. So there's really two of them in this case, the power generator, the backup generator, and the line supplying their building, as well as the water meter easement. And then the third thing I noted is an item that will come back to you that we're still in discussions on, and I will say we have some concerns about. They have asked for direct access from the upper level of the parking deck to the apartments and commercial space, primarily to the apartments. The benefits of that is that access will really cause people to park on the upper level, which is where we want them to park. And if you remember, when we reached the agreement with LMG and the city, that was our intention, is that they use the 4th and 5th floors. The downside of that is it will require construction that cuts into the deck, and with the type of post-tensioning that's in there, that is a very difficult prospect. We have instructed them that they had to hire Kimley Horn, our original civil engineer on that project, both to design and review this, and we would not even take it to you without that review approval. There are still some concerns about it. Mr. Downs has particularly expressed some concerns about it, so we would like to see Kimley Horn's review and plans for that before we bring it to you. So right now, it is just the generator and water easement. I'll be coming back to you with that proposal at a future meeting.
And the water easement actually runs to the city of Concord,
That's right.
but it's for this project.
The generator is primarily for elevators? Is that?
It is elevators and life safety.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
And as I
questions?
said, we do have a generator in the same location
Right.
to serve our parking deck.
Any questions, commissioners? Okay, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you, Jonathan. We move to item 4.8 from DHS, fiscal year 22 HCCBG funding plan. Glad to have Anthony Hodges with us.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak with you this afternoon. What I'm bringing forward today is the fiscal year 22 Home Community Care Block Grant Funding Plan. This is funding, as you know, that we receive every year through the Area Agency on Aging. It's Older Americans Act funding from the federal government and then through the state. And it helps to provide services and programs through various county departments and nonprofits for citizens in our county that are 60 years of age or older. This year, we received a little bit more than we received for fiscal year 22, 2.85% more than fiscal year 21, so a little bit over $24,000 more. So our total block grant allocation is $898,247. That does require a 10% match, so that would put the total at a little bit over $998,000. So just under $1 million for that, if anyone has any questions.
Okay, questions for Anthony? I think I looked at that document earlier today, and it is quite a few pages.
They ask for a lot of information.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I do have just one question, and probably should have asked this question a long time ago, not particularly on this item in particular, but when Mike, when we have things like this, where we come in, it requires a county match, where do we usually take the money from? Contingency, or is there a fund set aside for the 10%, or is it general fund?
If we know in advance it's budgeted, that's what they turn in their budget, they know that there's gonna be a required match.
Okay, so it's already in the budget then? There's a line item in the
Yeah,
budget
this is the
for
budget, yes, sir.
that? Okay, I'm just curious, because, we have a lot that requires matches.
Sure.
And I wasn't 100% clear on a lot of times where the matches came from, so thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I think you have the next item as well, Medicare Improvements for Patients and Providers Act.
Okay, this is the Mipa Grant, like you said, Medicare Improvements for Patients and Providers Act. This is a federal grant that we receive each year, and although the grant runs from October 1 through September 30th, we usually don't get the contract about halfway through the year. This year, we received $6,608, and we had budgeted $3,000. So this is requesting to make a budget amendment for that additional amount, and there's no match for this grant. What we use this money for, along with our SHIP grant through the SHIP program, which is assisting individuals with Medicare, either signing up for Medicare, or a lot of this is focused on outreach for the Medicare Part D, the drug program open enrollment that occurs from October through December. So we use this money for outreach, for advertising. You'll see our billboards we put up. And we tried to do this. In normal years, this past year, we did everything virtually or over the phone, but normally we're at the senior center each week during open enrollment. We go to all of the libraries and the meal sites, and then also at our office, but try to do outreach as much as possible to serve as many people as possible for that.
Okay, any questions on this one? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, now we're at item 4.10 from Finance Budget Amendment for GASB 84 statement. And welcome Wendy Hagler to talk about that.
Hello. So fun stuff, Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 84. This affects the way that we account for our fiduciary and agency funds. We had 6 in our financial statements in 2020. The charitable campaign and sheriff civil records funds will be absorbed into the general fund. The undistributed taxes and jail commissary will become custodial funds, and the Department of Social Services Fund and the Intergovernmental Fund will become special revenue funds, and that's why it requires a budget amendment and approval for these to become special revenue funds. Since they will be special revenue funds, they require revenues and expenditures to be budgeted. There's no county money in these funds because the revenue that is brought in is what equals what's paid out. The Department of Social Services Fund manages the financial affairs of persons unable or incapable of managing their own funds. And the Intergovernmental Fund accounts for the fines and forfeitures that we collect and then turn over to the schools.
Okay, any questions for Wendy? Okay, I think you have the next item, Self-Insurance Dental Fund.
Yep. Each year, Finance reviews the self-insurance dental fund. Budgets are created based on average weekly claims and monthly administrative fees for the prior year. But this year, we've had an increase in the weekly dental claims and the monthly administrative fees, and this budget amendment will increase that budget to account for the increase.
Okay, questions on that one? Okay, and other post-employment benefits trust.
Yes, or other known as OPEB. So this is health insurance that we provide for retired employees, and that promise to provide that benefit once our employees retire. And this is a liability that's on our financial statements, and at the end of last year, it was $34.5 million. And in this budget in fiscal year 22, if approved, we'll set aside $2 million in an irrevocable trust for these funds. That's the only way that you can offset your liability. And attached is the trust agreement and the resolution to give management the authority to open the trust and participate in the state program. So the state program is an ancillary governmental participants investment program established by the treasurer for local government OPEB trust funds. So this will allow us to participate, and it's about a 90-day process once it's approved to get that started.
Any questions on that one?
Yes, Wendy, is that something new? Have we not been required to do this in the past, or is this something that we're starting to do?
You're not required to. It's not a requirement. The state just provides this for local governance to set aside money to pay for future benefits. So like I said, it's the only way you can offset your liability. So if you want to set aside those funds where you've promised those benefits, but it's not required. It's just, it is good practice. So it is a good thing to do. It's good practice to set those funds aside for future benefits. But like I said, it's not required.
But is it primarily for the former employees that have retired, or how does the normal employee benefit? What are the benefits for us doing this, other than having the money set aside?
It's not going to change what our benefits are. That's in our personnel policy. But it just, like I said, it just offsets that liability for the future expenses. So it's not the expenses that we're paying now, it's what we promise to employees in the future when they retire.
And we get asked about that every time we go out to debt, for debt.
True, for bond.
The bond companies ask you, are you covered? Are you making sure that you've got money in place to cover those expenses in the future? And sometimes it's been a positive conversation, sometimes it's been a negative, and we want to make sure we're moving in the positive, so it's always a positive conversation.
Right, well, this will just be a fix to that little issue, so that won't be a question no more, right?
Correct, that's right.
Okay, I guess I'm confused, but, so what have we done? It made it sound like we're doing something new.
Well, this is new for the county.
So what did we used to do that we're not doing anymore? Because I know we didn't just get 34 million of liability, that didn't just come up, so.
Well, we've had that on our books. It's been several years back when another Gasb statement required you to start accounting for that and put it on your financial statements. So we have an actuarial look at this every year, and that's the liability that they assess for the county for, like I said, promised benefits. And we've changed, it looks like you've changed your policy several times, and I think last year actually went down. But the county has not set aside funds before. So this is what's new, is we're setting aside funds to offset this liability.
Okay, so.
And we're setting up the trust.
Okay,
to
no,
set
that
up-
part I understood, that whatever
Okay.
to open this program, we have not been in before.
Right.
So that makes sense to me. I just didn't know what we were doing before to show that we were setting money aside. And the answer is we were not.
We're not, right.
Okay.
And that number continues to grow.
Yeah,
so-
no, it's
so
not gonna go, right, it's not gonna go down as we grow and we get more employees and more employees over time. And so, no, okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that item? Okay, then we move to item 4.13, and Tom Nunn will talk to us about uniform guidance for federal procurement.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The federal government has given local governmental entities permission to increase the micro purchasing threshold from $10,000 to as much as $50,000 when utilizing federal funds through a self-certification resolution. Currently, the state of North Carolina has a minimum purchasing threshold of $30,000. The county is requesting approval to increase its federal micro purchasing threshold to match that of the state of North Carolina's procurement laws. A micro purchase threshold indicates whether a non-competitive purchasing process is allowed. An example of this would be when the county is purchasing supplies, goods, furniture, or services with a total dollar amount below $30,000. Once you reach $30,000 and above, the county is then required to solicit competitive pricing or rate quotes before making the purchase. And again, let me reiterate, that's only when we're using federal funds. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions. You explained it well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and then now we go back to Wendy for update of capital project fund budgets and related project ordinances.
So annually, we update our capital project funds and the related project ordinances. And so this year, we're updating our construction and renovation fund, small project fund, sheriff's fund, county capital project fund and the school's capital project fund. In addition to updating these funds, we're also consolidating the northeast area park and land to the county capital project fund. We're budgeting our deferred maintenance for fiscal year '22, and we're also budgeting a couple of PAYGO projects, $1.5 million for our Brown McAllister for engineering, $300,000 for the fiber infrastructure, and $550,000 for the firing range project.
Okay, questions on this item, commissioners?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we now move to item number 5, which is our budget for fiscal year public hearing, which we have advertised. No, I got one more.
Sorry.
4.15. All of these look very similar.
They do.
So, yes, you have 1 hour to present this item before our scheduled public hearing.
We'll be done in a minute. So this is money generated from that Duke rebate program. You're gonna be seeing me probably most months, because as we do projects and close them, we get revenues, and those revenues have to be placed by you officially. So that's all this does, is it's taking the $3,858.75 that we earned last month and putting it into a place where it can be expended.
Very good. Questions on that item? Okay, you said 1 minute, and you were pretty close on it.
It's my goal every time.
Thank you. So now we move to the part of our agenda where we have the public hearing on the budget, which we had advertised for 6:30 PM. And so I think we have to wait until 6:30 PM in order to open that public hearing. So
You can take a break. We do have some food in there now, so
yeah,
if you want a couple pieces
So
of
we
pizza.
can't do a closed session for an hour, can we?
Do what?
Do the closed session.
Well, we can't, unless you want to get something to eat real quick or drink. Or we can take a little short break and then go into that.
let's take, if it works out, let's take a 20-minute break and reconvene and do our closed session, and then come back into public session at 6:30 for the public hearing.
It
Does that
works.
sound
And then,
reasonable?
Are we doing it closed in here, or are we
No,
going to do
Well,
it here?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
Very good. So for our television viewing audience, we'll be back on the air at 6:30 PM.
Who would have thought?